The agenda this evening, we have a published agenda that has to do with some unfinished business for a public hearing for special use permit 2024-01, Randall Self-Storage Special Use Permit Application. And then we do have some new business of the master plan. So any comments on the agenda this evening? Any questions? If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as drafted?
I'll make that motion.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll proceed forward with the agenda as drafted. For tonight's, excuse me, is there some noise in the background? If you could please. Okay, if you could try to keep that down until we're ready, thank you. So for tonight's agenda, are there any conflicts of interest that any of the commission members have with items on this agenda? No. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the approval of meeting minutes from June 24th, 2024. I noted that one item, master plan outline, should be on the second page, should be a D and not a C. So C is public hearing, D is master plan outline. It's just the lettering convention. You all see that?
Yes.
Any other edits?
Thank you.
None.
Okay, with that, could I have a motion to approve the minutes with the edit of the D change of the C change to a D on the second page? Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes of June 24, 24.
With the D.
With the D, yes, with the edit on the numbering of the second page.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved for June 24th. So now we'll move into public comment for any agenda items other than the public hearing topics tonight. Would anybody like to come forward to make any comments that's not for the actual public hearing?
I only received cards for the public hearing.
Okay. Doing that. So I'm going to talk just for a moment to talk through a process here, how we're going to go through this evening. First, we're going to go into some correspondence, and then we're going to have the applicant, when we go into the actual unfinished business of the public hearing, we're going to ask the applicant to present. Then we're going to ask the Torch Lake Township to present. Then we'll go into public comment. So the public comment will not happen until after the presentation and after the staff has presented their findings. And then we'll close the public hearing, and then the Planning Commission will go into deliberation. So with that, Sarah, do we have any correspondence?
Sure. So the only correspondence we have is related to the public hearing. Do you want me to list those right now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So you have, this was in your packet. You received this prior to the meeting. You have an email from Ted Murdoch. You have an email from Herb Roth. And these were older. These were right after the last public hearing that you had related to it. You have an email and a letter from Dan Swanson, and then there's an additional public comment from Herb Roth, a letter. Those were all sent to you prior to the meeting in your emailed packet. And then on your desk tonight, in addition, was public comment from Chad Rose, Judy Nelson, some photos from Herb Roth, and then there were some, I don't know what you want to call these, all duplicate letters that are signed by
So
individuals.
the items that were dropped off this evening, are they new or are they repeats of things we've had?
These are new. So on the top, it says Sense Packet. Those are all new items you've not seen. You didn't get a chance to review those prior to the meeting unless you looked at them just now when you were sitting here. In addition, there were a couple of items that they're going to be talked about from public hearing. So there's it looks like a table that is on your desk that was somebody dropped off tonight, Dan Swanson letter, and then there's some pictures. I don't know who those are from, but those were on your table as well tonight. So you've not seen those until just now.
Okay. So let's go into go into the next item, which is unfinished business. So this will open up the public hearing. So with that, I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and begin your presentation.
And just a reminder for anybody that's giving public comment or the applicant, you need to speak into the microphone so that we can hear it on YouTube.
And also as a reminder, no questions from the audience or discussion in the audience. Please just let the applicant make his presentation.
So can you, the microphone? Yep. And if you're going to walk around, you need to carry it around with you.
Okay. Then I might just do that. Hello?
You can try that again.
Is this good?
That's
You can hear me
pretty
now?
good. You have to hold it real close.
Okay. Okay, my name is Rick Randall. We were here just a couple months ago. And what we were proposing at the time was to build bridge units at, now it's the address is 2643 US 31. This is next to our house. Our house is actually just south of this, the adjacent property. The reason I mention that is because the opposition to what we're building is because it would be detrimental to the neighborhood, and we tend to disagree. We've done this according to what the Planning Commission and the zoning ordinance requires, so that we have peaked roofs, so that the roof is peaked. We have windows in the front. We have the stone frontage. Last time, really, the shortfall was our landscape, and so I tried to stumble through that, but that was what was late to the meeting. So we have that, and we submitted before the July meeting was what was intended to have this meeting again, and that's when we submitted the landscape. So you've had that material for a long time. My wife Audra is here to talk about that part of it. The questions that we had last time was the fire chief, and so the fire chief has Kevin gave us approval on that. The drainage is on the back of the buildings. We have more than twice as much, but any engineering questions I've got, there's Roddy Beaslak. He's the guy that did our paperwork and did our PDF for this project. So I can handle any questions now that you would have from that PDF. If you should have those, he would be available.
Did you say your wife was going to present aspects as well?
The landscape, and then also Peter Wendling is here to just talk about the zoning and the special land use and how that applies to this.
Okay. Do you start asking questions now, or did you want to go through the rest of the presentation, or how did you?
Well, I can give you a lot to it. The whole idea behind what we're doing here is they're 10 by 20 units. So the buildings are 20 feet by 250 feet long. The lot is 371 feet. So from the road to the buildings is 62 feet. And then from the back of the property to the property line is 45 feet. The visibility from the road coming in, so I submitted to you some pictures of the road going in. So when you drive around that road, and I'm part of that neighborhood also, so we have a lot down in the Bay Harbor Club. So it's not something that we would think that we would do that would be detrimental to the neighborhood or certainly to our neighbor behind us. When we first started this whole process, it was my understanding that you had to have a special land use. And so before we even mentioned it to anybody, we were going to pursue the special land use. And if the special land use didn't go through, then there wasn't any sense in spending the money that we have to get it to go to this point. Well, the special land use comes with the PDF and everything that goes with actually getting it done. So that was part of the reason why we delayed the meeting in March, because we didn't have all this prepared. I was of the mindset that you might give me special land use contingent on instead of the other way around. And so anyways, now we're here in August. And so we've complied with what we think is everything related to the planning commission. And so the meeting to oppose this seems like it would have been the meeting when you ratified the special land use for storage units. And so now we're asking.
Sorry, Sarah, if you could please hold. Thank
Yep,
you.
sorry. So now what we're asking for is special land use for something that's already in the planning commission's ordinance. And you just have to do these things. Well, we think we've complied with that. The question about a turnaround. So we have room in the back where that has been brought up, where we'll actually be able to turn around in the back, that driveway there. Sorry. And so that would come in, and then you drive. There's a T here, so you can back in and turn back around. So we'll make that very evident, so that that's possible. It's 30 feet between buildings. The light, there's 3 lights on each building. So for 250 feet, you have a light mounted 7 feet tall, and it's low level light. Certainly, again, the advantage is the building design is that the doors are just on the inside. So there's not doors on both sides, so that people will go in and go out. The doors themselves are 7 feet tall, 9 feet wide. So the amount of storage is not going to be big boats or motor homes. Actually, just minimal storage. You can put a little fishing boat in there, perhaps.
Please speak into the
You can
microphone.
put wave runners, sorry. So you can utilize that storage space, or 10 by 20s, and it's specifically related to just smaller use. You can, again, it's a 7-foot height door. Anything else I was going to say? The water, so the drainage is adequate. I mean, it's extremely sandy right there. So we're not concerned about the stormwater runoff. The turnaround I mentioned. Yep. So this is Roddy. So now you're talking to the planning commission. So we do have all of our permits in place with MDOT, soil erosion permit. And anything else, Roddy, that I'm missing?
I think you got it pretty much covered. I just want to make sure they understood we do already got MDOT, right? Yeah.
Okay, yep. So,
Can you speak to the turnaround again? Because I couldn't understand, because I look at the plan.
so if you just look at any page on that, that you have right there. Yes. So this space in here, you can come here and back up. So you'll be able to back in and turn around, or pull forward and back up. So you'll be able to turn around here. It's big enough to make a little lollipop, as Roddy mentioned before.
It's going to be a gravel base with some grass growing on top of it. It's kind of what it's going to look like.
Can you repeat what he just said?
It's going to be a gravel base with grass. So is that what you said, Roddy?
Yes, yeah. So it's not going to, when it rains or something, you're not going to fall in because it's going to have a gravel base underneath some grass, right? I just don't want gravel showing the whole time. It's going to be heavy enough to
Can you hear this?
Not sort of. It's mostly what I can hear pretty well, but we want to have as many people can hear it as possible.
So
Yes.
what Roddy was saying was that it's going to be a stone base with grass on top, so that it's not just always a stone look to it. So it's yeah. Got her? Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And that's something we should have on the site plan. That's not mentioned on the current site plan that we have.
Okay. Is that a concern?
Well, the turnaround in general is a major concern, at least of mine, because if you can't, people are going to want to bring trailers down here more than likely.
Yeah.
I rent 3 storage units south of here, and I always take a trailer down there, and it has a turnaround, like you can just pull right straight through.
Sure.
And this one doesn't. And so if you can't turn around with that trailer, you'd have to back it all the way back and go back onto 31, which would not be a good thing.
No, but we think that there's adequate space. It's 30 feet, and then in the back part of that property. So to come in here and be able to do that with the trailer, you can. So we have the space for that. Do you see what I'm? So. No.
It would all just be
It'll be a stone base with grass on top.
okay. I'm not sure what that is, but stone base with like like steppable type stuff or
So Ronnie,
stone?
what are you thinking on that?
Well, probably a 6-inch, minimum 6-inch base over some sand. And then typically I like putting about an inch of topsoil on it, just so the grass takes, right? But it's a hard base. If he needs me to, I'll put a cross section on there after the fact. I mean, that's kind of the intent.
So it's like hard grass.
Does that make sense, Jeff? Yes? So Roddy says they've done it around, he's down in Grand Blanc, so that's where he's working. So for fire trucks and turnarounds, they've done this in the past with that. So it looks like grass. It is grass, but you can still use it to turn around.
Yeah.
And you won't sink. Any other questions? Is there any more?
Any other questions of the planning commission at the moment?
Last time, Jeff, you were concerned about the square footage,
Mhm.
and we covered that. I think we covered that.
Mhm.
Not this time. Did you? No?
I didn't see a response to that. I mean, I'm concerned about how we're calculating because it looks like we're using a piece of the property over here to the side, which isn't,
Okay, where are you looking now?
well, this is, it's hard to do this with everybody to see. So the main part of the storage is right here, right?
Yes, sir.
But I think you're calling this part of the property.
It is. So the property goes, it's an L shape, except the lion's share of the property is actually here for the most part. This is our house and our garage. It's tight. We didn't really know where the property line was. We built the garage, unfortunately, we met on our property. But so this is that, and then this is the rest of this whole lot. So it actually only occupies about 29% of the property of the site. Did you get that packet that I submitted?
Yes,
And that kind of outlined the square footage that's being
I
used?
saw your response.
Okay, okay. And then the dumpster, that was another question. They don't recommend dumpsters. Storage facilities don't recommend that you have a dumpster. That's not what people are there for. That's not what we're interested in doing, is to collect people's junk. So they take care of their own garbage. It comes in, it comes out, whatever they put in the storage unit. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
please.
Yes, yes, forgive me. So when it comes to a dumpster, I'll address that. So the dumpster, we don't have a dumpster there. That's not the purpose. We don't want to make it look like that's what it's there for. I'm sorry. Yep. Is that better? So the dumpster is forgive me. And so the dumpster isn't something we're going to do. Again, we don't want to invite people's garbage. When people store stuff, they store stuff that's of hopefully stuff that's valuable. They want to pay for the storage. And so we don't have that garbage there. Any comments on the garbage or the dumpster, Roddy?
Well, it just gives them the opportunity, because you're gonna probably have to dump it every 3 or 4 days. Honestly, there's a dumpster there. So, in past experience, you're right. Typically, we don't have a dumpster, so people take all the belongings, kind of put it in there and take it with them, right? There shouldn't be any trash. Again, they should be thrown away on your property. Like you said, it should be mostly valuable.
So Mr. Randall,
So,
you're going to have to paraphrase what he
Yeah,
said.
I can do that.
Yeah.
So Roddy just said essentially what I said, is that most of the time people are storing stuff, hopefully it's valuable enough to pay for it. It's not something that we invite you to dump in our dumpster. That's not part of the deal. So, and then, well, I got you.
Yeah.
So anyways, the idea that that's not what it's there for. So we won't have that. We have done this. So it looks nice.
You're going to,
It's so it looks nice. We have put the plants in and the landscape design. It's everything that you've asked for. Again, the roof design, the peach, the windows, Wendy and DJ, Torch Bay Marine. Patrick has the other Airbnb. Sally, she's next to us. So Sally, then it's Jeff, he's from Ohio. And then the next person is Patrick, and then John and Penny. And then we also asked Sue Sarin, Chris, and Sonny. We have a lot of support from all the houses around us. So in the immediate vicinity, that's our support. The one thing that's questioned was the contingent with, or consistent with the use of properties around it. So if you look at north, south, and east, is that that's part of village business. At some point, village business has to stop. There's a line where it stops, and that's on the west side. So it's a forest, and part of the land conservancy or otherwise, it's a forest back there. At some point, village business ends. Well, that's the back of this property. So, further questions? It's the asphalt so that it'll look nice. We're not trying to design something that's going to attract trash or junk. Our lease is pretty specific also. It's 8 pages long. We have storage university provides us with all kinds of information. The Tractee Building Company, I've done that seminar twice. So you go and pay
Get it.
attention to what they're talking about. That's where they said that dumpsters aren't something they do. They don't even recommend an office. So they said, an office really isn't necessary. But we do have office space. So because we have the building at the top of the day park, it used to be 31 scoops in the back half. We own the front half. So that part of our office space. So for phone calls and addressing the issues that go with the storage units, we have that covered. Phone system, the signage is going to be a flat sign. It'll be in this berm is where we're going to put this, so it'll fit in there within the parameters of the sign rules, and so that'll be there. It won't be on the buildings. Obviously, we have windows on the buildings. The grass in the front, we mow it. It'll look nice. This will be nice. You will see only the building from as you're going this way. You probably won't even see the buildings until you get past them going south. So that's kind of what I got.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Riley. We may have more questions as we go through and after we deliberate for a little bit.
And there you go. Can I invite Peter to speak?
Sure.
Well, good evening. I'm going to put the microphone on the stand. That way I know I'm standing close enough and you can hear me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Peter Wendling from Young, Graham and Wendling in Bel Air. And I know a few of you, make sure I get this on correctly, probably know of me. I know, of course, Mr. Millar, your legal counsel, and long-term your planner, Sarah as well. Often with Mr. Millar, sometimes I'm sitting where he's sitting when I represent municipalities, and sometimes he's up here and vice versa as tonight.
If you could stand closer to the
Even
mic.
closer, okay.
Thank you.
Boy, this thing's
As close
really-
as you can get it
Yeah.
without hugging it.
All right. So,
Thank you.
in any event, this project is proposed to be in the Village Business District. And I noticed that under Section 10.02, uses by right, there's a substantial amount of uses by right, which of course would be much intensive in use than what is being proposed here with these storage units. That includes such high traffic items as convenience stores, taverns, even vet clinics where you potentially have barking dogs. This is a very quiet use, and not all storage facilities are the same. I've seen numerous occasions, both representing private parties as well as representing municipalities, where you have storage units that are of much larger scale, particularly up in Charlevoix County, where you're storing boats in the 60 plus, 70 plus foot range. Many of those type of facilities are what they consider to be upscale, but perhaps more problematic because they often contain items such as office space, restroom facilities, essentially becoming the owner's she shed or man cave type of development. That's going to generate a lot more traffic into that type of unit than what's going on here in the nature of this type of storage unit, which is something that people generally access maybe 3-4 times a year on average. Maybe some people do it more so, but it's not in high intensive traffic type of use. And the village zoning district, business district rather, 10.1, it's meant to reuse, redevelop underused or underutilized parcels within the business district, and that's precisely what's being done here. Just as importantly, and of course you've already looked at it, I'm sure, is the township master plan. If you look at page 61 under the future commercial development, you look at items. Let me get to just one moment here. Yeah, 61 and 62, commercial development, to guide the future commercial development of Torch Lake Township, the township shall, and one of the items here is direct future commercial development to the village business and commercially zoned, I think it's a typo, areas within Torch Lake and Eastport, and away from the lake shores within the township. In addition, on page 71, which is entitled Future Land Uses for a Commercial, Section 13 states under D and F, direct future residential and commercial development to existing community centers and away from narrow strip lots along roadways, and to foster the retention and future development of compact rural community centers with distinct identities within Torch Lake and Eastport areas. And given the plethora of uses in the village business district here, it's already been mentioned, there's not going to be any type of trash generated, nor is there going to be any trash allowed. There will not be any dumpsters. It's not going to encourage the deposit of trash or lingering. People are going to go in and out of there and do their business and be done. Unlike a tavern, which produces, and a restaurant, which produces odors, obviously, from commercial cooking, grease pits, things of that nature, trash, and food waste and things of that nature. This will have none of those elements. And therefore, it's not going to have a great impact at all upon any neighboring residential areas, which in turn will not have access to it. At least not directly from the neighborhoods. All right. Without a podium, it takes a few moments here. So. Now you have 4 standards for approval for site plan here. The first being that the special use proposed must be consistent with and promote the purpose and intent of the ordinance and zoning district in which the use is proposed. Based upon the master plan and the items that I just cited out of the master plan, this certainly is consistent with it, given the variety of uses by both by right and by special use within the zoning district itself. The special use proposed must be compatible with the zoning and use of adjacent lands. This is a very quiet type of use. So even though the use of the adjacent properties, most of it which is residential, this will have a very limited impact as opposed to any other type of development, including others that are allowed by right in that zoning district, which would have a greater impact easily on the neighborhoods and residential areas nearby. The special use proposed must not adversely impact the environment. This is not a type of use that's intensive. It's not going to have a detrimental impact upon the local environment. You have buffering areas, you have forested areas, and you're going to soon hear about the landscape plan, which you have before you, and therefore it does not have an adverse impact on the environment, whereas some other uses potentially would that are otherwise allowed, allowed as a use by right. And the special use proposed must not unduly burden or exceed the ability of public services or facilities to handle the anticipated needs of the community. Again, this is a low impact, low intensity type of use. You have your information from the fire department, emergency services. This is not a type of use that's going to generate a lot of EMS runs, a lot of potential for fire and things of that nature, unlike a tavern or a restaurant. So given the low impact nature here and of this type of development, this is the type of development which fits nicely within the area, within that village business district, which is quiet, will increase the tax base, and will not cause additional harm or have negative impacts upon neighboring properties. It's a quiet type of use. And I think it's time for you to hear about the landscaping so that the Planning Commission can be assured that the landscaping will also be adequate to protect the aesthetics of the neighboring properties as well, which I know is very important to the property owners in the vicinity. So I'd like to turn this over to the landscape expert here.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Audra Randall, and I'm here to share with you the landscape details that are proposed for our storage area. Here we have some graphics that are demonstrating a generalized look at what the landscape would be. We have enhanced it through time and conversations of what the outline of what is required. Through that, we have met with the idea that we have followed along with the Michigan native species, shrubs, trees, plants that are required that the township has outlined. We have definitely fulfilled our front area here. There is additional plantings on the drawings that were submitted that do demonstrate even more landscaping across the front there. On the east side, which is the roadside, we have base plants of red cedar, aspen, and also white spruce. We also have plantings along that area. Excuse me just one moment. On the east side, we have also yarrow, sand cherries, and red rosier. So there's a nice variety along the front. Within what the guidelines are, you have demonstrated you would like 4 foot on the sides of each of the buildings as far as just foundational plantings. Those as well include shrubs and trees. We also have included serviceberry trees such as the shablo and algony. They're flowering trees. They're very pretty. We also have dogwoods along there too. If you go to the north side again, there are barrier trees that are outlined of what you would like on that, which include, again, some on the north side, white spruce, red cedar, and dogwoods. The smaller plantings along where the 4 foot along the back edge, those will be yarrow and an interrupted fern. They can handle a little bit more shade. All of the plantings I've worked on and discovered through this process. I do a lot of landscaping. My house is landscaped. I help others do their landscaping. So for me, this project was kind of something that was kind of new to me, having to go with all the Michigan native species. So it was kind of like a little fun educational period, but I think that through this, I was very diligent in making sure that the different species of animals that might travel through there, that these are not their favorite foods. So that way we could ensure that there's going to be a larger success rate for survival, and they will be definitely cared for as far as the trimmings and clippings that we need to do to just to manicure each of the different type of trees and shrubs. On the back side, the west side, which is butts up against the Conservancy property that is within the Bay Harbor Club, that area there has, again, very extensive. We really focused on heavily landscaping that area to try and help to shield any visible aspects that Bay Harbor does not want. With that being said, again, on that west side, we have red cedar and white spruce. We also have those serviceberry, but we also have some dogwoods and the sand cherries. So most of it has some variegated look and color, as well as allowing us to have different trees blooming at different times of the year. And again, the same type of plantings are on the south side of the building, which is that 4 foot area of foundational plantings that are required. And those also include some flowering trees and different type of ferns on that north side or on the south side. I think it's a very pretty area as far as landscaping. We've taken great consideration and understanding that this is something that could fit into the community, but it really requires us to do the intensive landscaping in order to follow with our township guidelines, but as well as taking pride in the fact that we want to demonstrate that this is something that we want to take care of from a standpoint of understanding the visibility piece of it. Do you have any immediate questions? I know I kind of said a lot there, but I think we've fulfilled all the guidelines.
Any questions?
No,
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go into staff presentation, is there anything, any questions or comments from the Planning Commission? Okay. So we'll switch. Sarah, can you walk us through what you found regarding the application?
Sure. So in your packet, you have your staff report that really was just updated from the last time around with the additional information that was needed to be provided. So you have the details in there for everything. The only items that I do want to mention that were in the staff report were the native landscaping. We talk about the Northwest Michigan Invasive Species Network, and there's a couple of those items that are not in that listed in that document. I think that's pretty minor. That's something that could be a condition of approval to work through those details on the species with staff, unless you have some major concerns about, numbers or locations or those things. I think that the species type, you don't need to get bogged down in that for that component. We did see a large increase in the number of plantings on the plans from the last meeting. What else did I want to mention here? Kind of with the trash, which the applicant had mentioned. In my experience, as a planner, we typically don't see trash containers at storage facilities. It kind of encourages dumping at the site because there's not people on site. You have a dumpster that's out back. It allows people to go in and can actually encourage people when they're cleaning out their storage unit. They don't want to take the mattress. They put it in the dumpster, leave it next to the dumpster. So a lot of times you don't see, unless they're manned, that component to it. That can be something the Planning Commission, can discuss further if you have concerns about that. And then just kind of some of the comments that he mentioned tonight is related to the turnaround and the sign. Neither one of those are on the site plan. And so I would encourage the Planning Commission to require those be added to the site plan when you go through the process, so that we have a document of what, we need to know exactly what it's going to look like. So it needs to be on the plan. That's our contract. That's our binding agreement for what they're going to do and what they're going to construct. So it needs to be on the plan for us to be able to review and approve. That would be something, it would be up to you if you're comfortable, tonight after discussion to say that you know enough, or if you need additional details to show up on the plan before you're comfortable approving it for that. And then as far as, I'm going to jump back to landscaping really quick too. Our ordinance does not have a lot of specifics, like types of trees, size of trees, those items. It talks more about, the Planning Commission has to find that, adequate screenings there. So that may be a part of your discussion as well. But just to say, we don't have some of those typical standards that are in most zoning ordinances in this zoning ordinance. Does anybody have any questions for me? I don't know, Todd, do you have anything you want to add? Okay.
Was everything, did you receive everything that you needed in advance of this meeting?
Yeah, so the list from the last meeting, we needed landscaping information. We needed the impervious area, which was on the old plans, but is on this plan too. Hopefully Jeff might be able to speak to that too, if that's been cleared up for him. The fire department, there was a letter in your packet from the fire department that they've approved it. So that was one of the items. And so then just a general update to the plans as well, so that we weren't, we didn't have all the landscaping before the meeting. So we kind of received some of that at the meeting last time. So I think that was kind of a larger component, as you just didn't have a chance to review it before the meeting started.
I have a question on page 11 of 18. Where it's not provided, you did talk about the sign, but the two below where it says none provided, none provided. Oh. What am I doing?
Yeah, get it right up in there.
All right, so on page 11, we already talked about signs that you said is in red, not provided. The two below say none provided, and I wanted to know the difference.
Yeah, and actually so R, where it says none provided, are that they do have exterior lighting, so that should say is provided. They have some wall packs on their drawing, for lighting that's going to be on site. That would have to meet our ordinance, so it's 100% cut off, down shielded for the lighting, for that. And then there's no fencing or walls, and the ordinance doesn't require that, so there's none proposed on the plan. So these items in this checklist too, so this is for the site plan, as a part of the ordinance, kind of like checklist we go through to make sure it's all on there. If you don't have something, it doesn't, have to be on the plan, or you don't have to say something about it. Or if you find that there's something that is not, that you don't think needs to be on the plan, you can say don't need it type of thing, as well.
Other questions for Sarah? If no further questions, we'll move into the public comments. So with that, we will go into public comments. We have a timer up here. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. The timer will go off at the end of 3 minutes. Please direct your comments towards the chair. That's me. And if you have not filled out a comment card, please do so and hand it up here to Lori.
You ready?
Yes.
All right, first up, Herb Roth.
First of all, the turning diameter for a car is 50 feet minimum.
Please, sir.
The turning diameter for a
Thank you.
car is 50 feet minimum. It won't fit. I read Rick's letter he submitted after the last meeting. There are many points that are inaccurate and some that are just not true. One of his statements was the only people opposed to the project was Bay Harbor Club members. First of all, he never talked with us about this. We've been friends with Rick and Audra for years. He came to the Christmas party at my house and only told one neighbor to, quote, stay tuned. He never told anyone in the association and refused to talk with us even after we found out about it from reading the Elk Rapids News. You all have a copy of the petition we circulated. Please look at it very seriously. It's not just Bay Harbor Club who's opposed. There were 204 signatures. Only 5 people that we talked with didn't sign. Residents were 160. Family and visitors were 44. In that group of residents, there were 35 from Bay Harbor, 20 from San Marino, 56 from Torch Lake, including the township, as well as along the lake itself, 19 from Forest Beach and Michigan Trail, 7 from south of Torch Lake, 3 from Eastport, and 9 from Central Lake, East Jordan, and Ellsworth. Some of the comments, and I won't duplicate them, on the petition was wildlife habitat would be adversely affected, not appropriate in natural setting, too unsightly for natural setting, unneeded, detrimental to conservation effort, too large for the property, safety concerns. Follow the master plan and new zoning code. Master plan, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Do not support, too large for the area and ugly for our town. We should not allow the area of our town to be junked. Destroys the natural beauty, not necessary, ruins the aesthetics of the area. Too ugly and ample space elsewhere, too large for property, destroys hamlet, detracts from natural beauty, very bad for wildlife, move it out of the village, needs more acreage and unsightly. There's almost 100% of the township and surrounding area that does not want a storage facility in the middle of our township. Please look at how strongly your constituents oppose this proposal. It's not just Bay Harbor Club that does not want it next to our nature preserve. It's everyone in the area. Please follow the new ordinance that is going to be approved and reject this plan. The people don't want it. No one wants it except the very few. Like Andrew asked at the last meeting, if your neighbors are so against it, why would you build it? Everyone's against it. Why would you build it? What it boils down to is this proposed storage facility really only benefits Rick himself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Vicky Fingerroot.
Hi, and thank you for having us again. I will be as brief as I can and keep it within 3 minutes. This is like really tall, so it's hard to tuck into it. All right, I want to just start with Rick's letter to you. In the 1, 2, 3, 4, about the 5th paragraph down, he talks about that his south end of his property is 96 feet from where we would see it from ours. It is not. It is 45 feet. He is incorrect there. I just want you to make note of that when you're making your decision. Talking fast, I can get in. The next thing I wanted to address with you guys is your new zoning that's coming into effect. Currently, you have, I think you say 2 acres, and within a week, 2 month, you're going to say you can't build a business if it's on less than 10 acres. A month from now, if we were here, it wouldn't comply with your zoning laws. So that's something to consider. Regarding the master plan, master plans are important. They help us figure out how the township is going to be in the future. I agree with that. It's all kind of based on interpretation. So I just want to go over a few points on that. Just let me find it. 3 points are this. The facility is inconsistent with the character of Torch Lake Village. Number 2, it is incompatible with the surrounding properties. And number 3, it is inconsistent with both the current and future zoning ordinance. So it does not meet the standards for zoning board approval. I want to go further into your master plan. And again, I would just want to talk about a few different points in your master plan, if I may. In the commercial development, page 62, number 8, fosters the future mixed residential and commercial development of the hamlets of Torch Lake and Eastport as attractive, diverse, and compact, such as commercial centers will be established in accordance to a community drive plan promoting unique community identity. So does our community identity want to be storage sheds? The next thing I want to bring up to you is to explore the creation of a light industrial district within the zoning map of the township. High-end residential areas are normally not in industrial areas. So I think that is an important point to consider. And one more point, discourage low-density strip development along US 31 and M88. So discourage that, yet we want to approve a storage unit. It's not dissimilar than a strip mall. So I just want you to consider, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I don't think this is the right location for this. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Sorry. I was amazed at how well you timed that. Well done. Maureen Lorenz.
Thank you, Chairman Graves and members of the Planning Commission for this opportunity to express my opposition to SPU 2024-01. I worked 35 years for a Parks Department as a registered landscape architect and property manager, and then taught sustainable landscape design at a major university. The forest to the west and adjacent to the parcel Mr. Randall would like to develop with storage sheds is healthy. This was the assessment of the county forester when he walked the site with us. He said the forest was rather rare in the county, with all the hardwoods and good understory present on a dune environment. Protecting this Torch Lake Township forest and its inhabitants, the migratory birds in it, is one of our foremost concerns. Adjacent development can be a threat to a forest, depending on how it is done. There is a conservation easement granted to the Grand Traverse Land Conservancy over this parcel, demonstrating Bay Harbor Club's commitment to conservation. The Randalls are members of the Bay Harbor Club Association, and they themselves have dumped plant debris over the ravine slope, which begins about 20 feet from the rear property line. From knowing them, I am sure they thought this was beneficial, but on a slope, dumping any material can be harmful. It is very different knowing our neighbor and fellow member than 50 strangers able to easily access this area. My years of experience working in parks has taught me that hillsides are just too tempting a place to toss unwanted articles. With no supervision and easy access, lack of effective or dense screening from this site, I think this is a very real concern. We are not aware of any way to know what will be stored in these 50 units. There are no restrictions, therefore hazardous materials, gasoline, pesticides, equipment contaminated with tree viruses, etc., are always a possibility. The groundwater flows to the west and into the conservation easement and forest. Contamination from leaks or dumping has the potential of seeping into our drinking water and the water of the bay, which has already happened once. The Bay Harbor Club property is zoned R1, and the current zoning requirement is for effective screening consisting of native vegetation between residential and non-residential uses within the village business. This plan does not comply with that requirement. With regard to the tree selection, just briefly, red cedar, as you know, is not a native. Whatever does get planted anywhere will end up in our forest. Light pollution is a serious threat to wildlife, especially migratory birds and our night creatures. I understand that the pack lighting will have to, or wall packs, will have to comply with the dark sky development, but we don't know what those fixtures are, what the colors are, foot candles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen McLean?
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Steve McLean. My wife and I were the first or second residents in Bay Harbor Club. I've been living in Antrim County as a resident since the day I was born. I have always been here. I think I'm probably the only person in Bay Harbor Club that can say that. I used to, I'll say this, without my bathing suit, swim down on this beach. And I know that this beach, okay, was one that the community felt was their beach for many, many, many years when Michael Dow owned it, okay, and then when he gave it to the state YMCA. I was on the board of the state YMCA when that property was given by Michael Dow. Actually, I was the chairman. I'm an emeritus member now of the state YMCA, and we have always tried to protect that property and everything that surrounds it, okay, the way Michael Dow wanted it and the way the state Y wanted it. The reason the state Y sold that property was because of impossible tax implications that could happen because of the amount of property that the state Y owned. You may be aware that Campea is one of the statewide properties, okay? I do not believe, my wife doesn't believe, and our association doesn't believe that this is the right thing to do in any attachment to that property as far as the conservation easement, as far as what has happened there, what Michael Dow wanted, what the state Y wanted. We actually, and I say we because I was one of the people who voted, we sold the property to the developers of that property for far less than we could have gotten for it if it was to be developed into something maybe like this storage unit. The other thing that's a real concern for me is that it's a beautiful picture, but you know what? Summer only lasts for about 2.5 months here. What's it going to look like in the wintertime with all the snow plowing and everything like that? Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Ted Murdoch?
I only have one thing that I'm concerned about, and you talked about the access and cars turning around. Sir, could you please speak? Talk about cars turning around. Still a little closer. Closer than that? Closer or, yeah, or louder somehow. Okay.
What's
Maybe
that?
direct it up. Oh, there you go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. The only concern I have is they've talked about fire engines and cars with trailers, but nobody's talking about EMS units getting in there and not being able to turn around. That to me is a big issue, not being able to turn around. It just stops up the whole, I mean, it would be a mess in there. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Rita Furdak?
This might be a little too loud.
Go.
Ruin my doing a thought. All right.
I can hold the mic. Do you want me to hold
No,
the mic?
I'm good. My name is Rita Furdak, and I'm the original owner of 2757 Bay Harbor Club Lane. More importantly is I'm a mom, and I'm a nana, and I'm a great nana, and I care. I care about my kids, and I care about your kids. I care about their future. The potential of not protecting our natural resources for them actually keeps me awake nights and should pit the conscience of all of you who are responsible for making the hard decision to get it right without prejudice and without bias. You have most recently, in preparation for this meeting, reread the well-researched, documented, and professionally written.
Can you speak into the microphone, please?
Written letter submitted by my board of directors. I believe that your individual values and those expressed in the Torch Lake Master Plan mirror our values. These values clearly emphasize the importance of preservation of land in its natural state. We must all agree that it is incumbent on us to be good stewards and environmentally responsible if we are to save it for generations to come. I think we all cherish the view with the sun shining and the birds singing and the animals roaming against the lush green woods background as we approach beautiful Lake Michigan. We should be wary of a contrasting image with the view of two storage units as we approach the dunes and the waters. And finally, I want you to believe that I am as proud and as grateful as you are to live in this beautiful Torch Lake Township community. And I ask all of you to join our team in preserving all that is wonderful about this community. Please vote no on the request for a variance to build two storage units in this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Swenson?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Swanson. In considering Mr. Randall's special use permit application to construct two rental storage buildings, each almost the length of a football field on his 1.6-acre lot, I urge you to ask yourself, what is your vision for how this township should look in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? First, based on the signed petitions, the community's visions for this township does not include construction of these storage sheds or more storage sheds. By way of this petition, almost 200 people state they oppose this project because it's not compatible with the zoning of the surrounding properties and it adversely affects the environment. Second, the construction of these rental storage sheds is inconsistent with the current zoning ordinance that states new developments in the village business district, quote, maintain and enhance the existing small town character of the unincorporated village, close quote, and further, be consistent with the Torch Lake Master Plan. Well, the proposed rental storage units do nothing to enhance the existing small town character. Secondly, these storage sheds will be built directly adjacent to the Bay Harbor Forest, which is subject to the conservation easement, and the Township Nature Preserve. The master plan repeatedly emphasized this township's commitment to the environment and to preserving the forests. These are a direct threat to that. Third, Randall's proposed storage unit shed project does not meet the required standards for a special use permit. Now, I disagree with his attorney here. Those standards require that the proposed project be consistent with the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance and that it be compatible with the zoning of surrounding properties and further not adversely impact the environment. While allowing Mr. Randall to construct these storage sheds is not compatible with the Bay Harbor property, which is zoned residential and is a forest. And further, the community agrees with this based upon those 200 signatures on the petitions. Finally, it challenges or is a threat to the adjacent forests. Fourth, at your June 24th, 2024 meeting, this Planning Commission unanimously approved the revised zoning ordinance. Now, in that revised zoning ordinance, you made a decision for what your vision is of this township in the future because you decided these storage rental units could only be built on a 10-acre parcel. That's the vision that you approved less than 60 days ago. Mr. Randall proposes to build these football-length units, 2 of them, on a 1.68
Thank you.
parcel. Thank you, and I ask you to reject this application.
Thank you.
Roberta Patterson?
Hi, Planning Commission and Honorable Chair. My name-
Hello,
my name
ma'am,
is-
if I could ask you to,
Oops.
yes,
You mean my teacher voice won't do it?
it
Oh my
won't.
gosh, I can't believe it. All right, you tell
It's a
me.
lovely, but it
I
won't,
don't
it's
use a
not loud enough.
microphone. I don't need a microphone in my classroom. Well, that was a long time ago. Anyway, my name's Roberta Patterson. I'm a former nurse and teacher. My husband and I built at Bay Harbor Club. I believe we might have been the 3rd house that was built. It could have been, I'm not sure about when Vicky finished or when Steve finished, but I believe we were the 2nd or 3rd house there. We built that house in compliance with all dune restrictions, which were at that time made it impossible for some of our friends to build at where they wanted to. So they have to build with a big elevator in their home. I just wanted to say that I think all the points have really been made very clear to you what our feelings are, and I'm not even going to use my notes. We know that the storage facility may disrupt the surrounding natural area. We know that we want to preserve the property as it is, because we have preserved surrounding us, and the movement of wildlife through our area also is disrupted because of this. One of my friends informed me that the proposed property for the storage facility, actually, the deer do have birth their fawns there. So there you go. I do want you to consider all the points that have been made. I think everybody's really done a great job. I want you to think about why we all are here. I've come up north since I was a child from downstate. Not necessarily to this area, but you come up here for the quiet environment, for the wildlife, to go fishing, to, go swimming, whatever your plan is. And I want you to think about it, that we need to preserve, as my friend Rita said, we need to preserve this for the future populations. My whole family my house will be left to my family. My 3 children, my 3 sons, their wives, my 6 grandchildren, their
spouses and my 5 great-grandchildren. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
And Arlene Gendelman.
I'm another resident, obviously, and my husband and
Ma'am, if you
I-
could,
Can you hear
sorry,
me?
if you could move it closer. It's challenging.
There. Is that better? Okay. My husband and I bought our home in Bay Harbor Club 31 years ago because we loved being up north. And the things we did up here, sailing, skiing, riding bikes, being in a beautiful scenic place. Our grandchildren grew up
Ma'am,
here.
nobody can hear you in the back.
I'm
I'm sorry. That's
sorry.
okay. Just, it's difficult. Just hold it right close to you. You almost
Okay,
have to,
I'll speak
there,
it.
that's perfect.
All right. Our grandchildren grew up here with wonderful memories. Our children loved coming up. It was great for the family. My question is, why would we buy a place with storage facilities as part of the scenery? I can't imagine that. And things change over time. I realize that. We have to change, but do we have to change for the worst? I am completely against the storage facility and resent being placed in the position of fighting to keep it out. It's very uncomfortable to be fighting with a neighbor. I feel very strongly about Mr. Randall's attempts to build a storage facility. We have many nearby and we don't need another one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it? Oh, we have another one.
Last minute, that's all right.
We have several more.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Laura Anderson.
Okay, I am not a resident on Bay Harbor Drive, but I do live nearby. And one of the things that concerns me about all the discussion that's been going on is that, if you take literally the special use proposed must be compatible with the zoning and use of adjacent lands, then what do you do on the border properties between 2 zones? You're basically saying that that it's unusable. I think that you should keep in mind that if you deny a low impact building such as a storage unit, I think that's kind of what I heard tonight when I think it through, especially relative to putting a restaurant or many other uses that you could in that area. You'd just basically be taking away any ability for him to use his property in a somewhat meaningful fashion. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rita Service.
Just a quick question. I know there's a lot of plantings going around the buildings, but I haven't heard any discussion about an irrigation system. So it was just a question about all these plantings being against the buildings, if there's any discussion or any plan for that.
Thank you.
And Don Schultz.
Good evening. I respect all of your guys' opinions. If you live back there, make a lot of good points. Pretty good job there. On a little bit of a contrast, just speaking as an individual, I am supporting and allowing Rick Randall to put up a storage building for rent on his property where he lives. If a person follows all the rules and regulations set up by the zoning, township, planning commission, or whoever, they should be granted the right to build within those rules and regulations. From the pictures that I've seen, these 2 storage units with very nice landscaping will be the nicest looking commercial building in the area. In fact, they will look better than some of the homes do along the way. The 2 storage buildings are about 85 yards long, but they run parallel to each other, which would only make them about 40 yards apart. These, not for sure, but I think that these would have security systems. They would. Okay, which is a good thing. Plus, with Rick living next door in the house, that gives you a little bit more security if you are renting one of those storage buildings. If you've ever rented one and you've had everything stolen out of it with no security systems, this is a good idea, which has happened to my son in Eastport. The storage buildings will have the security. On top of that, Rick lives in his house and whatnot. I already said that there. If any one of the, on the planning commission owned the same property and wanted to do the same thing that Rick wants to do, following all the rules and regulations, I would support any one of you. If any of the opposing people wanted to put anything in that same property, go through the same thing, or even on their own property back in behind here, I would support that also. I do believe people have a right to do what they want with their property. They bought it, paid good money for it, as long as they take care of it and follow the rules. I think it's a good thing. All I ask of the planning commission is a little fairness and common sense in supporting Rick Randall in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's really it.
That's really it. Thank you all for following the timing and so forth as well. So with that, we have now completed the public comment section, and we can now close the public hearing. Correct, Sarah? So may I have a motion to close the public hearing for special use permit 2024-01?
Motion to close the hearing, public hearing.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing for special use permit 2024-01 is now officially closed. Thank you again in the audience for the respecting the time and so forth. So now we can move in discussing it. So based on the presentations, based on public input and perspective, what are you thinking?
Do we have a checklist? I continue to feel that it's inconsistent with our overall master plan and revised zoning policies, ordinance rather. I've heard the comment several times and I tend to agree. I don't think we want to be a community of storage facilities. I recognize that we are talking about village business area and there are various uses that could be made of that property, but I don't feel this is consistent with our vision for the township.
Other perspectives?
Were we going to have more discussion on the turnaround?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, this is open to whatever, any questions you might have. We
Oh.
can also ask the applicant if we have follow-up questions for the
Okay,
applicant as
so,
well.
but you, right now, you just want how we're feeling
Yeah,
about
just,
this?
well, perspective on it, but also just general questions. So what you just had about the parking lot's another one.
Well, I would, just my general feeling, I feel this is extremely difficult for me personally. The thing that I was really contemplating is the ability to generate income in this township. And it's difficult for year-round income. And unfortunately, storage units fit really well in that category of year-round income. I'm personally against storage units, personally, but it's not my person. It's what's for the best of the township. So I'd like to hear more about the turnaround. I'm very conflicted right now.
So we're going to talk more about the turnaround. So I've got that as a question for myself too. So we'll come back to that. Other perspectives.
Sure. I think that the community, I'm glad to see the community here, and it's good to hear their thoughts, and it's too bad that we don't hear more of them. So the new ordinance, while I agree, we all supported it, and we didn't hear much from the community through that process. It's not a reality yet, so unfortunately, we can't consider it. And all that we've got today to go on is our current zoning ordinance and our master plan. And I think that with situations like this, maybe people will realize how important it is to participate in that and give that feedback. So maybe we'll have more to go on as a planning commission. Right now, I feel like based on what we've got, the zoning ordinance, we would allow it.
Jason? You're never
I mean-
short for words.
I mean, personally, it doesn't matter what I feel or what my opinion is. I mean, the facts are the facts. We have a checklist to go through, and if it meets all I mean, it doesn't matter what I feel.
Lori, any other thoughts before we?
Well, I do have concerns that the property just seems so small. 1.6 acres, it just seems small to cram all that on. I know you all have discussed the trash issue, but I did use a storage unit for 2 years when we moved up here, and it was a gated one, and there was no dumpster, but trash was left. People just leave their stuff. So it would have to be something that was policed and picked up often. And I also have concerns with the turnaround. I don't think it's enough space, and I don't understand why the turnaround can't be paved also. And I do consider the property values. For instance, was at a facility today in Traverse City, and it was plunked right in the middle of what used to be a nice neighborhood. And my first thought was, wow, these poor people, their property values just tanked, and they're dealing with, traffic pulling in and out of the parking lots. And although I am for change and growth in our township, I am leaning to not be in favor of the storage unit.
So a procedural question. So Sarah, we've got, thank you, Lori. We have 2 checklists to go. The one is the special use standards themselves, and the other is the site plan standards. Which should we go through first? Does it make more sense to go through the site plan standards because it might shape our perspective on the special use, or do we go to special use?
I'm indifferent. Todd, do you have a preference?
I think logic suggests you go through, sorry about that. I think logic suggests you go through the standards for special use approval first, because if you don't approve that, then you never get to the question of site plan approval. On the other hand, under certain circumstances, I could see how what the site plan looks like may inform your decision on whether or not that particular special use fits in and satisfies the 4 requirements that you have. So I don't know that it's necessarily a situation that you need to go through one before the other, and maybe consider all of them at the same time, but then at the end of the day, go through each one when you're doing your findings and reaching your conclusions to make sure we covered all of those topics.
Okay. So I think we could we'll just go into the special use standards first. And then there's 4. So this for the For the members, this would be on page 20 of 47 of your packet.
Yeah, so it's packet page 20 of 47, or it's page 16 of 18, depending on which numbers you use. Try to make it easier, made it more
So-
complicated.
As we go through these, there's 4, and then there's a D standard as well, which is more of kind of general. Okay.
Right, yeah, so the first 4, and then D is kind of where you would look if you wanted to add some conditions to the special use approval. Those are some of the items where you might want to require something depending on the project.
Okay. Well, let's just, the first standard, number 1, the special use proposed must be consistent with and promote the, let me back up a second. From a process perspective, we're going to each do a roll call vote for each one of these.
Like straw poll roll call like that? Like you're just gonna go out and you're gonna, yeah, I agree, or are you gonna do like a motion for each one?
Because of the impact of these particular ones, I think we'll do a motion for each one.
For each one? Okay.
Is that what you would recommend?
I mean, you can do it any way you want. Typically, I mean, I guess it depends. However, whatever you'd like to do.
Okay. I think
As long as you're
we'll
working
just,
towards a decision, however you get there, I'm good with.
I think we'll just use a roll call vote for each one. For standard number 1, the special use proposed must be consistent with and promote the purpose and intent of the ordinance and zone district in which the use is proposed. So roll call vote. Start with
Yes.
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 Jason's yes. Lori?
Yes.
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 Chairman's yes.
Okay. Do we have some reasoning for that decision? For each of your yeses, if you could just kind of explain maybe a couple of items for why you find that it's consistent, promotes the purpose and intent?
Can I add a comment here, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
So one of the things that could happen, depending on how the Planning Commission chooses to rule on this application, is that it could be appealed to a circuit court. And one of the things that the circuit court judge has to do is analyze whether or not the decision you made was consistent with the law and based on substantial, competent, material evidence on the record. The only way that the judge can do that is if the judge knows why you did, what you relied upon in reaching the conclusion that it does or does not meet the standard. And so in order for that to be in the record, it actually has to be talked about and mentioned and then referenced in the minutes, so that if a judge gets this and has to review it, the judge knows what you did and why you did it, the bases for the decision that you made. And so that's the reason why Sarah is asking for some justification, if you will, or bases for the conclusion that it does or does not meet a particular standard. And that's in the chance that this gets reviewed by a court.
So given that, some of these standards, it might be fine. We won't have a difficulty. It'll be more obvious. Others will not be so obvious. So, and it puts the commission, I think, in a bit of an awkward spot to be able to necessarily articulate those on the spot, so to speak. So, I mean, one thing, if we could go into like some kind of a process where, like Sarah, like you could go through it and articulate each one of those and evaluate each one of these, and then come back with a findings of fact or findings that you come up with, and then we could react to that, like, and then you propose it to us, and then is that a process?
Yeah, in
Okay,
some
fine.
communities, we have that where you have staff draft a finding for the standard, and then the planning commission reviews those, or that's your starting point, you may add or change, they're just a draft. But going through and providing that documentation, and we can reference documents that are included in your packet to support that finding for you. So they're still your findings, but they do kind of makes it a little bit easier, I guess, to go through the process if you have something to reflect back on related to that. I think it's still important to kind of have a discussion about each of the standards at the planning commission so that, I know or Todd knows where you're headed and what you're thinking about that. And then also that helps because if there's something that you're missing, additional information you need from the applicant, this is when you would say, we might be able to do this if we had this additional information or we knew this in the process. So we definitely can do that, do the draft findings for you, but we still should talk through them a little bit so that we know where you're coming from.
Well,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yes.
Todd?
Yep.
And part of it, I think, too, is where I'm going there is because I can tell just by the facial expressions for most, or not most, but some of the planning commission members, including myself in this process, about how we feel, because it's a complex issue. And several of these, again, many are going to be fairly straightforward. Some are going to be particularly challenging. And I think several struggle with the first one. I know I do. And I very much struggle with that.
Yeah, I think it's also important, a lot of these documents they continue to change, or we're receiving a lot of new documents. Even just tonight, we got more comments to consider with some different points and heard from the public. There's a lot of information, right? And it's changing subtly over time. So maybe we should talk about some of the concerns. For example, the turnaround, some of the screening that we've talked about in the past.
Okay.
The water runoff, those sorts of things, I think are issues that have come up.
So Sarah, given that, should we go into the checklists in detail now, or should we, given this new process, or do we just talk about the general things that came up?
Well, whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, why don't you talk about the couple of items, the turnaround, because it's been mentioned a couple of different times, what you're looking for, what you're comfortable with. We heard about why isn't it paved, what they were proposing. I think at a minimum, getting it on the plan of what they'd like to have there. So having a little discussion from a planning commission, if that's a majority thought that a turnaround should be there, or if it's just a couple of people and we say, okay, there's no turnaround needed. So we should go through that. So why don't we start with that? And then we can talk a little about the landscaping, because this is the first time you've been able to see it, to be able to talk about if you think there's enough quantity and buffering from the neighboring properties, if there's something additional that you need there, or species wise or anything like that. And then maybe we can circle back to these standards and maybe that'll help a little bit in that discussion. Does that sound like a plan?
Yes.
Okay.
So let's start with turnaround.
Yeah.
How many of you I do not feel that the turnaround that was described is adequate. I think that I'm not convinced that it's big enough. I mean, again, I use storage units all the time and I'm always putting stuff in and out of there. And it's hard for me to imagine if I were using these that I could even get down in there, even with my truck, much less a trailer. I'm sure I could do a little J-turn and get around, and I know there's spots that they put at the end and they described it, but I think we need more clarity in the plans for that. How do others feel?
I don't personally care if it's paved or not, as long as people aren't sinking and getting stuck. So I'm good with that. As far as the space, I don't think that they're large enough to put a large boat where you would be bringing a big trailer. Can't say that no one would, but no smart person would take a very large trailer down there, I don't think. So I don't, as long as you know how to pull a trailer, I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be backing that up myself, but anybody that would be, I would hope would have an idea of how to get to the end and back up the trailer. So I guess I'm not that concerned.
Yeah, clearly, even a small trailer would be really difficult. You'd have to be a pretty good trailer backer to get down, even if you wanted to turn around at the end, or at least I'd want to understand more the size of the area and everything down here. of how to do that. Jason, what's your perspective?
Well, I'm more looking at this picture right here and how much area you have here. And 5 days a week, every day, I'm driving even a 14, 16, or a 20-foot trailer, and I would have no problem pulling in there and backing my trailer up, whether it's gravel or grass. So I have no concerns. I could do that blindfolded.
I'd like to see that. But
I mean, I drive a trailer every day.
How do others feel about the turnaround?
Yeah, it concerns me, and I'm concerned that the driveway itself is only 30 feet wide. Even just in a truck or a large car, no trailer, you got to have a plan when you pull in there, right? How are you going to get back out? And it would take you a couple point turn at least to turn your car around, or if you couldn't get down to the turnaround or whatever. It's a pretty narrow driveway there, I would say.
Are you talking cars? Are you saying it's going to be hard to turn a car around in there?
No, I think any larger car, yes.
I thought we were talking about turnaround. We're not talking about in the
Well, that
middle.
too. I mean, just in general.
Okay,
Right? When you
I
get
thought
in
we
there,
were
you
talking
gotta
about
get
turnaround.
out. So, or else you have to back in to start with. And it doesn't look like there's room to do that coming off the highway.
I mean, if you just pull straight in, unload your stuff, go straight, go around the corner, back your trailer and take off. I mean, I don't see the issue here.
I don't know if maybe that would be part of I think Rick had mentioned there's 8 pages to the lease. Maybe that would be part of the call out. That was one thing I thought, if it's not paved right there, if it's not obvious in some way, that would be part of your welcome packet to your lease. Hey, there's a turnaround here. We suggest this path in, and this is where you would go to turn around.
Okay.
I personally don't think there's enough room for turnaround. I'm glad you're an expert at it, Jason, but not everybody is.
Your dad could do it.
Maybe he could have, but he probably would have liked more room, and as he got older, he would have probably hit the building. So.
Well, if we're looking for more room, I'm sure that there's probably more room to be added, but I mean, I don't think this should be holding us up as the turnaround.
Denise, any perspective? You mentioned turnaround.
Well, because it was mentioned and it seemed like it was new information and even the materials used was new, which was, I'd never heard of grass over gravel that was hard packed. So I just wanted more explanation of what that was. I'm not an expert on backing up, storage units, doing a trailer, any of that. So I'll go with your expertise.
So Sarah, let's we're going to need more information and more clarity about size and a turnaround that's sufficient.
Okay. So additional, I guess my only comment, I know this, you guys are talking about it, but if you do gravel with grass over it, which there was only a couple mentions about it, I think it'll be hard to determine where the gravel ends and the dirt begins with the grass if it's all planted with grass for turnarounds. So if you are comfortable having some sort of that's still impervious, like a gravel driveway is still considered impervious when you're calculating stormwater runoff. So this will still have some sort of an impervious factor to it. But if you're comfortable with the grass, I would suggest some sort of signage or some delineation of where that turnaround is. One, because I'm not sure that people would know they can turn around on the grass. I mean,
Wouldn't be obvious.
right. So depending on where you grow up, when you grow up on a farm, you drive on all the grass, right? And if you drive where you're used to driving on asphalt, you don't drive on the grass. So depending on that part of it. But if you're comfortable with that, I would suggest some delineation on that. But I don't know if you just want to say, bring us something back, or if you have really strong preference on the materials for the turnaround. You should let the applicant know at this time what you're looking for. Because I'd hate for them to come back with gravel and you say, no, we want asphalt. If you don't have a preference, that's fine. But
Does that give them, meet the requirement of the impervious?
We don't really have any,
It's not very clear.
well, you know what? Let me look really quick at the definition.
I mean, maybe the owner could, why was that material, why was it
Yeah.
even?
To me, I think that whatever they use, it needs to be large enough and obvious enough so that there's enough room to handle a small trailer or do a Y-turn or whatever the heck it would be, and then and obvious enough that you can use that entire area.
Yeah, because it talks about maximum impervious surface, buildings, parking, sidewalk, et cetera. So, we'd have to look a little bit further if that would go into the calculation. I think they still have enough space or enough of a number before they hit that.
Any other discussion around turnaround?
I mean, if you don't think that's enough, how much do you think would be enough?
I don't know. I'd have to go out and, if I were just trying to figure it out myself, I'd look at my own truck and I'd look at a trailer, and I back quite a bit as well. Not like you do, but I mean, I couldn't tell you how much distance it would take. I couldn't even tell you. I have an F-250. I don't know if it would turn around right there or not without doing a turn, but if I had a trailer on, I'd have to go all the way to the end and
Right.
back around. I don't know.
How big is the boat? That's a big one. That's a pretty easy.
So
That's pretty tight, very tight.
So
I was just asking that question
yeah.
so we can give it
Yeah.
to him, like, it's not big enough, but
What, Rick had mentioned that they had designed something, or his engineer could design something. I don't know if they have any additional details that might help in this conversation for how big that area is, any of the radius information that he might be able to let you know those details and how
So-
big it is, or
So Rick, can you comment on any of that?
at the microphone, please.
At the microphone, yes, thank you.
So you're specifically asking me how big it is or how much space we have back there? What is it that I'm supposed to answer
We're
here?
trying to figure out how large the turnaround that you're proposing is, some
Well,
of
the
the
buildings-
radius, what that looks like.
Yeah, and Jason made a good point, is that you can pull in and back up and pull back out again. But there's 45 feet from the back of the building to the property line. We're gonna put trees in there, but we would landscape accordingly. What you're asking about is impervious versus semi-pervious. When we talk about how's it look, I mean, personally, less asphalt's better to me. If it's something that we can do, we'd certainly put signs up that said turn around at the end. We can delineate that pretty easily. Again, it's semi-pervious, so we don't have to worry as much about the stormwater and where that's gonna go. It all drains excessively anyways. I like the idea of stone underneath and then grass on top, so it still looks like grass. And it's very usable that way, and again, you drain your stormwater that way. Size-wise, again, it's 45 feet to the back of the property from the building. It's 90 feet. So Vicky mentioned something about only 45 feet or something. What I did was I measured from the very back of the building to the road in Bay Harbor Club. That's 96 feet. Now, that's irrelevant here with the turnaround. In the meantime, we still have the buildings are 20 feet wide and the driveway is 30 feet wide. So on a 30-foot wide driveway, that's pretty typical standard from in between storage unit buildings. So as far as a wider driveway, a 40-foot driveway, I'm not sure that, I mean, we're not going to do that. So I guess I'm not sure about the question other than I back up a trailer and I back up a truck, and I certainly looked at that as far as is it doable? And so I believe you can. And I think with the trailer, then you go to the end of the road, at the end of the driveway, and then you would turn around. It isn't that difficult, actually. I don't
So
know.
you don't have any dimensionings for the turnaround that you can inform us with currently?
Sure, let's call it 30 feet by 20 feet in both directions. So you got 30-foot driveway is the width. The buildings are 20 feet wide. So that gives you 30 feet. The whole width is 70 feet. So if you had to turn around 70 feet as far as the width, and then the depth could be 35 feet. So you could have It's essentially 70 feet wide by 35 feet with a 10-foot buffer.
How far from the building?
Say it again?
How far from the building, past the building can you go
Yeah,
for the
35
turnaround?
35 feet.
So 35 feet away
If
from
you
the
had to.
building?
Yeah. 30 feet? Fair enough.
What about materials for the planning commission?
I'm relatively indifferent.
Okay.
As long as it's marked clearly so the person knows.
And we would do that. And the other thought about this, and you mentioned just, we live next door. We'll be around that all the time. We'll be trimming trees and cleaning it up and mowing the grass. We take care of it now. This isn't going to be an eyesore.
So I appreciate the applicant's comments, but remember that the special use permit goes with the property, not with the owner, correct?
Correct.
So we have to be mindful of, what happens in the future. No offense meant on that, just, it is what it is.
So Andy, you're okay with, as long as it's marked, whatever material it is. Denise, any thoughts on materials?
Yeah, I just had never heard of it, but it's fine.
Okay. Jeff, any thoughts on materials for the turnaround?
No thoughts.
Okay. Lori?
I'm all in favor of paving it.
Okay. Any other comments, concerns on the turnaround? Okay, so we're just
Don't
looking
think
for
so.
more details from the applicant.
More details, and then I think maybe even any kind of research or something, there's got to be something out there on the internet that shows this is roughly how big a truck with a trailer needs to turn around.
Yeah. There's some private road standards. I don't know if Antrim County has private road standards, but like in Grand Traverse County, a lot of the private road ordinances talk about turnarounds for roads anyways. I don't know those details off the top of my head to tell you if that makes sense here or not, but we could get that information as well.
Okay. So the next one thing that I had on a list was security. There was some public comments about concerns over security. Then there was somebody had mentioned their son or something. We had storage units, the same areas where I was, and one was broken into and took about $8,000 worth of stuff. And it's not the people that are renting that are the problems generally. I think it's the people that come around trolling for unpadlocked things, and if they feel that they can either break it or they can see a mistake or whatever, that's what they're going. That's what we talked to the police and everything. That's what they told us. So there are people that come around and patrol through in storage units and look for stuff. They look for issues where they think they can get into one easily. So what did the plans have in it
It'd be
around
hard for
security?
them to turn around.
That's
They're
true.
stealing.
I suppose. They get stuck. So what was in there around the security? In the plan?
I don't recall anything related
There's
to
nothing in there
security.
about that, but I thought I heard the applicant mention.
Video.
You
So we'll
have video cameras?
surveillance, yes. We will. It's not on the plan, but we'll have video surveillance. So we can put 6 to 8 cameras that will pretty much cover that whole area.
So we need to add that.
So you would like the security details provided as well?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Okay.
Native species. So Sarah, you had mentioned a couple things, but were some aspects of the plan updated on that?
Yeah, so the plan that you have does not. There are a couple of species that are on the plans. Like I said before, I think that's something that we can work through getting those updated for the types of trees to be consistent with the document that we use. But does the additional screening that's been added, how does everybody feel about that? Do you feel that it's sufficient? Do you have any concerns, anything that could be improved that you'd like the applicant to work on?
I did have one question. On the packet that we had, the drawing had a lot more plants than like that, the
Mhm.
beautiful one. That wasn't updated to reflect those, right? Okay, all right. I was good with the drawing, drawing.
Yeah.
So the one interesting point I heard was the big difference between winter and summer. So areas that are the most sensitive, for instance, along the Bay Harbor Club Drive, that spot there where the visibility into the storage units, what types of vegetation are proposed there?
So they have, and you kind of can see, there's different markings and then there's the key that tells you what the items are. So you start on the south end of that area, there's a sand cherry bush or shrub that's gonna be there, and then you work your way up. So there's 2 serviceberry trees, and then there's some more bushes and shrubs. I believe there's 2 spruce on there, but that, I think, based on the look, is the only like evergreen tree that's there. There's 2 of those. The rest of them would be trees, I believe, that would lose all their leaves in the wintertime on the west property line.
So it seems to me that to address concerns, there's 2 things. One, to make sure it's blocked so people can't go through. So they don't see that, turn around and say, oh, there's an opening. They come right back on the road.
That drops.
Oh, I'm sorry. I drew the wrong thing. Right here. They come up this area. And so that's,
On the back of that property, that drops 30 feet.
Rick, they're
Yes.
talking
Yep.
until you're acknowledged.
so basically where the Bay Harbor Club Drive comes forward, and this basically where it's closest to the property on that kind of southwest corner. Right now, because I drove by the other day, you could just drive right through there. So the plan is to block that. But what is the plan to block it with? Both from a structural perspective to make sure nobody can't drive through there, and what kinds of plants, and will those plants be green all year round?
So on the plan, there is no plans to do any blocking on the southern portion of, of the 234 of the west property line, 160 of it's gonna have landscaping. The rest of it does not have any proposed landscaping or fencing or anything there. So it's not on the plan, it's not happening.
And then what is there that's further north would not be green all year round, right?
Correct.
That's what, yeah, looks like this. Yes.
Yeah. Help yourself.
Okay. So Sarah, I think that, do you have feedback enough on that of concerns, or any more clarity needed?
So you're looking for, down by Bay Harbor, some either landscaping or something to block that off because it's near the road. You also have concerns that the trees or the vegetation is not a year-round vegetation, so more evergreens in that area.
Yes. That would make sense to me.
Okay. Okay. What about on the north side that was added? Any concerns or questions about that?
I thought we had a space problem there. I'm confused how that was. In June, we were talking about an issue with not sufficient screening to the north.
Right. Yeah, there was no, on the June plans, there was no screening on that side.
Right.
They were kind of using the neighboring property as a
Right,
screening.
right.
So there's additions here. And I mean, I guess according to their engineer and landscaper, they can put them in the retention basin and it won't impact the stormwater capacity. Because that's pretty much where it's going,
Yeah, that's what I thought. There was a stormwater and then setback issue there, right?
Yeah, not setback necessarily, but more stormwater.
Which kind of relates to my other concern, which is just general, stormwater. Where's all the water going to flow? Because there's a natural area behind it. I gather that the water flows to the west.
Yeah, so they have, A little bit. So on the page C4, you can at least see the asphalt, how they have it, the squiggly arrow lines is the direction of the water, how it's supposed to flow to get to the basins. And the topography. So
I see.
the asphalt and the edge of the building, that's as far west as at 620 is the elevation. And then you can see 619, and then it goes back up to 620, kind of as you head to the northwest corner.
So it all flows. Flows east.
Yep.
I mean, if you have concerns about the stormwater plan, we could also, send it to an engineer on behalf of the township to make sure that's covered for your concerns. They design it, but if you have additional concerns or need additional information related to stormwater, the township can enlist those professionals to act on our behalf to verify the information.
On that sheet, can I say this? On that
Yes,
sheet,
go ahead.
If you just look at the capacity of both detention areas. So we've exceeded the capacity of what's required by almost twice as much. It's on that one chart. I think that's on page 4. But it says pretty clearly what the amount required is, as well as what's been provided.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Sarah, I don't necessarily think, he has an engineer that he's done for this particular plan, so I'm not too worried about that. Unless others have a different perspective on that, I'm not worried about that. How about irrigation? Anything in the plans for irrigation?
No, I don't think there's a well that's going to be on site, but you'd have to ask the applicant.
Can I?
Before I ask him, any other concerns around that? Yes, I agree. So
Yes, so it's going to cost a lot of money for the plantings, and so the last thing that we really want to have happen is that they don't survive. Last meeting in June, I mentioned Doyle Berg, and he's a well guy from Williamston, Williamsburg. Anyways, the first plans, when you looked at them, it said, irrigation will be required, and then we took the irrigation won't be required. But we're going to put a well, we may have to change that location, but close to where that turnaround's going to be. We're going to put a well back in that back. So you at least have water. We'll have a different water source.
Okay.
So it's kind of our plans with that. If necessary, you can buy those little units that are go on the back of our little mow ride, and they carry 250 gallons, and you can water with that. But we intend to put an actual well to service those.
Cool. So we need to have those added to the plan then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, add the irrigation details or the well details.
Those are the main concerns that I had captured around the site plan itself. Any other questions for feedback for Sarah? I have a more broader question. So what leverage, for lack of a better expression, does the township have to enforce making sure that the applicant delivers on what he says he would in the plan?
So as a part of this process, kind of like I mentioned, this site plan, this is a agreement, a contract. They need to construct it to this plan. And if they don't, they're in violation of the special use permit and the site plan. So we have enforcement. The Planning Commission also has options to require some sort of a performance guarantee, bond or cash or something for components of it. that may be wise for landscaping, being that we can only plant during certain times of the year. If he wants to start operating before he can actually do the plantings, then this performance guarantee allows him to open. And then if for some reason the plantings don't happen, the township can go in and do the plantings for that. Same with kind of paving or asphalt. Sometimes you'll have performance guarantees for that. And that just helps to ensure that the items get done. I don't know if Todd, you have anything additional related to that or another way that the planning commission could ensure it's constructed?
Well, those are the two main ways. Thanks. Those are the two main ways. You either enforce the ordinance through a municipal civil infraction if they don't build out consistent with the approved site plan, or as Sarah said, you can, for certain components of the project, you could require a performance guarantee to make sure that the money is there. If the applicant doesn't do what they say they're going to do, then the township's got the funds to come in and do it. And if the applicant does do what they say they're going to do, well, then if it's a cash bond or cash, that gets refunded back to the applicant.
Okay, thank you. So that was the entire list of items that I had. But I think from a process perspective, Sarah, what we were going to do is go back, work with the applicant, and create some draft findings that reflect this discussion today. And then we'll come back and we can potentially vote in the next meeting. And as far as the guarantee, the performance bond or performance guarantee mechanism, we could consider that next time if we were to vote to approve.
Yeah, that's something typically with performance guarantees, we can do them a couple of different ways, but it's something where typically we have a couple of estimates that tell us how much it costs to do something, and then we request the amount, either if it's an average or it's the highest estimate or whatever, to ensure that the township can have the funds to be able to do it. Instead of, sometimes people have deals or no friends and they get a better deal on something and we can't be able to do that later on.
Mhm.
So to do the protection there. I don't know, Todd, are you comfortable with the information that we have for drafting findings in that component? Andy's ready to send it to us to work on.
Yeah. I think we've heard a fair
Enough.
amount and can
Okay.
Throw together a draft that at least can serve as a starting point for your discussions on either approving with conditions or rejecting the project.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question? About future use of the space being a storage facility, and I think there was even a comment here about hazardous materials or certain uses. Are there standards that we should consider for restricted use or?
I'm not aware. Is there anything in the ordinance pertaining to that issue?
So the ordinance says that they need to tell us if there's any hazardous substance on the site plan. It doesn't say in the specific site plan standards about hazardous materials and those items related to it. I think it could be a condition of approval if you wanted to do something. I think it could be difficult to enforce. It just would depend on what you're thinking as far as hazardous materials and what that looks like.
The fire department may be a good source of information for that. Also, depending on the types of materials that they're storing or the way that they're being stored, there may be other entity rules and regulations that come into play. The Planning Commission does have the power to require that other permits that are necessary based on the activity that is going to take place on the property be obtained in order to have a site plan and a conditional land use approved. So depending on what it is they're planning on storing there, there may be some other permits that are required. But given the nature of this development, I would doubt that there's any expectation that any significant hazardous materials are going to be stored there.
I mean, maybe a draft copy of the lease would be helpful, that, because I'm assuming there's something in there about hazardous materials. Would that be
Yeah,
helpful
that
to
would
the
make
planning
sense for
commission?
sure.
Okay.
Also, if we're gonna add stuff, can we have the signs and lighting added into the application?
Okay, the lighting's in the PDF. It's on the first page, I think.
Okay.
So the lighting specs.
So it's been a long evening. So to get this process in motion, then Sarah, we should have the planning commission vote on a motion.
Yeah, typically the motion, I think that's most helpful is you make a motion to direct staff to draft findings for the planning commission consistent with the discussion tonight. If you're comfortable doing that.
I certainly am. So can I have a motion to direct staff to direct findings that reflect the discussion of the planning commission tonight for consideration at our next meeting?
Motion to direct staff to draft findings and present for consideration by the planning commission at the next following meeting.
May I have a second? Discussion? We'll do a quick roll call vote.
Yes.
Jason?
I thought you were next.
Oh, Andy. Okay, I vote yes.
Yes.
I was going to go last.
Hey, did that first vote, or-
That's true, I did. You're right, I did. Okay, so we're officially done with that part for the night. So the other, for the rest of the agenda, we had on the agenda for new business to talk about master plan. I think we're all fried.
Okay.
Unless
There is an
somebody
outline
wants to
on
argue.
your desk. I threw an outline on your desk,
Yes.
so we can just hold on to that and I'll put it in the packet for the next meeting.
Okay, yeah, let's pick this up next time and do this at the next meeting.
Okay?
Ongoing reports. Sarah, got anything to report?
Did Jackie email it out at the beginning of the month? Yes? Okay. Nothing additional?
Nothing.
We're working through a couple of items with Todd for enforcement. But I don't have anything else at this moment, I don't think.
Okay. Any questions for Sarah? Jason?
Oh, it's my report?
Yeah.
Yeah, at our township meeting, we, as the board, passed the new zoning ordinance with some concerns. Some of our members were concerned with having to have 5 acres to have chickens. So we as a board may have to go deal with that at some point, because I know there's a lot of people that have chickens that don't have 5 acres. And then another one of our members was concerned with the 30-foot of vegetation from the shoreline to the house. He was very concerned about that. So we may have to discuss that too.
I listened to the recording and heard that as well, so we will have to pick that up. And probably perhaps amend the amendment. And so, Jeff, I think you've got a report, right? Aren't you the PC representative of the ZBA?
Yeah, we haven't had a ZBA.
I am the representative. I can report there have been no meetings.
No meetings, got it.
So, and to, off of what Jason just mentioned, the new zoning ordinance will go effect September 16th. So we will get you copies, with binders and all that good stuff for you. And we'll get on the website so that you can start looking at it and reviewing it. We typically leave the binders here. So we'll have a binder here. If you want to have a binder to take home, I guess let us know. I'll send an email out too, just to let you know. And because I don't want to run extra copies if you don't need them, but I'd want you to also have them if you like having the hard copies. So,
Put it online.
yeah.
Okay. All right, moving to public comment. If anybody would like to make any comments, please step forward. If you've already provided your name, I think you can just come up and just state your name one more time.
Yeah, my name is Herb Ross, and thank you. With the turnaround question, I did some review with the Army Corps of Engineers. For a single car, the diameter is a 50 foot with a 25-foot radius. So with a trailer, it's larger. It doesn't, I mean, it looks like it would be very tight in that area and probably wouldn't fit. The other question I have is with snow plowing, how are they going to clear snow plowing down there without pushing it on our property? I mean, it's a long stretch for snow. It has to go somewhere. Those are kind of my 2 points on that.
Thank you.
Dan Swanson, just a couple brief points on the landscaping. You will note that the building is 10 foot high. The trees that are proposed to be planted are 48 to 54 inches. That's not effective screening no matter what kind of tree it is. And secondly, on the south side, the southernmost building, Sarah pointed out, I believe there are only 4 trees being planted along that 250 foot length. All the rest are little bushes. So the trees aren't big enough, the bushes aren't sufficient. You've pointed out other screening issues with respect to Bay Harbor Club Drive. This has got to be looked at much more closely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I understood that there's no effective screening details or plans in the zoning ordinance for the township. So I have one that you might want to consider. Sarah?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Bobby Patterson back. My concern is about fire damage to the forest, of course, because we're dealing now with gasoline and other flammable things, which who knows how they're going to take care of that. But I think screening is really important. If we don't, we are environmentalists here. We've done a lot in our community to preserve we have a preserve, and that was amazing to get that done way back when. But I think, the fact that this is a pristine environment, everything that can be done to preserve that is going to be important, not only for us, not for you and me or my great-great-grandchildren, but, for 100 years from now. Let's figure out what's happening 100 years from now. I mean, we're not going to be here, but somebody's going to be here. So thanks so much for listening to all our
Thank you. Thank you.
Kristen Graves, and I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you all for
Did you fill out a comment card?
No, so I can't talk.
Well, we'll just make sure you fill one out before you. Do it after. You do it after.
You can do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're in trouble.
Kristen Graves, sorry. So Torch Lake Township Planning Commission members, collectively, you are the voice of our township. You guide, shape, protect, and grow our land, our hamlet, our village for not only us, but for future generations to come. We believe and trust in each one of you to uphold our master plan. I'm requesting each of you to take a moment and remind yourself that when something is granted, it causes impact and change, both positive and negative. However, it cannot be reversed. That impact, that change that you may grant or not grant affects many people. It affects our current and our future citizens of our up north community. I hope that you think it through, all of your questions are answered, and that they all meet all of the criteria.
Thank you. Public comments are complete. We'll move into concerns of the commission. I'm actually going to go last, even though I'm listed first. Any questions comments?
Now, I'd like to reiterate Lori's comment from before. It's great to see public involvement and so many people here interested in what's going on. Love to see you more often.
Agree. Others? Sarah, any concerns or question, or Jason?
Yeah, I would like to go. Not that I have to, but I would like to clear something up. I've read a couple of these emails that came out, the Murdochs and the Ross. I think I'm in cahoots with Rick. I've never met the guy before in my life, and I've never talked to him ever. So just to clear that up. And a couple other things, I hear everybody talking about preserve. Great. But, that shoreline was preserved at one time, and everybody got to build their house there. So it's not preserved anymore. Meaning everybody's got a right to do something on their property. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get to vote on this and finish this all over a driveway turnaround and irrigation. So that's mine.
Any other commission members? Sarah? I guess from my concerns or comments, this is a big deal. This is a big decision for us. It's the biggest one I can think of since obviously the zoning ordinance itself, and that was a long process we went through. But this is the biggest deal since Dollar General. So, we just need to think it through carefully. Need to make sure things are addressed, and then come back and consider it as a commission and vote on it. Okay. So listen to everything that you've heard tonight. Reflect on it, and we'll be back. So thank you. Anything else? With that, can I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll make that motion.
You have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.